morning, everyone. Andrew Plank here with LePage and the Vibe Real Estate Group. And today I do not have with me Jean Johnston of the Briar Hill Group, but she is off gallivanting somewhere. So we will do it ourselves today, just me and you. And thanks for joining in. So what we're going to do today is a review of last month's statistics. So today is June 8th. So we're going to look through the main statistics, try and get a sense of what's been happening and where things might be going. Because I'm sure a lot of people have questions about that. There have been some pretty big changes, I'd say. So let's dive into that. Bear with me while I just change up screens here. And so let's first of all just talk about what's happened in the last week before we go into the last month. So in the last week, we had 297 new listings come live compared to 185 properties go pending. Those bars are starting, that purple bar is starting to get further and further, up. It's very unlikely to be equal because usually that means we're selling more properties than we're listing, but we did see that back in 2021. Here we are actually in what I would call still like a mild seller's market, and we're still definitely seeing a lot of properties go pending. We're also seeing, as we go down to the lighter green one, 115 price decreases. So property pricing is still really, really important. And if you're not getting your price, it's time to do an adjustment and bring it in. And still properties are expiring as well. 49 expired. So let's see, 49 compared to 297. So that's 1/6 of properties listed might end up expiring based on these stats. So interesting bits there. Now this actually looks at the month of June, and we're only at June 8th, and the board puts out these stats on June 5th. So we only have 5 days worth of stats for 2023 to compare to 2022, but we can still see that in 5 days we had 95 new unconditional sales. Let's see, 5 times, let's see, average month is going to be, say, 4 weeks in that. So, we're still going to be down probably for unconditional sales, unless sales start to ramp up in activity and speed. New listings, 159. Again, much lower number of new listings than we were seeing last year. And then active listings were actually up above last year. And that number, I suspect, will continue to see rise a little bit. The big news really is that, and I like this graph, Jen Lowe, who's been a guest on our show a number of times, sent out an email about the, once again, another rise in real estate interest rates. And I thought this graph was useful just to show kind of the trend that's been happening over the last little while of the 1/4 point and 1/2 point rises that they've had. Actually, that looks like a full point here back in August. And so it does look like it's slowing down, but they had a 1/4 point just early 2023, another 1/4 point just now, and they are calling for another 1/4 point rise perhaps. So people are really hurting when it comes to interest rates. And so I want to talk about really briefly and just share, I have put it into the comments. I'm going to just do a share screen and pull up an article from Canada, from the Financial Post. And he's just saying that, Canadians are walking a financial tightrope as consumer debt does hit records. And people are really starting to feel the pinch and starting to affect I know in Victoria, prices on the island are actually higher than other places as well. We're one of the more expensive places to live. So that's really starting to impact people's spending and their discretionary income. And I suspect that just because we have a world where it's easy to get credit overall, perhaps we'll be seeing people diving into that credit first before we start to see people starting to have to make moves. And certainly people out there who are on mortgages that are coming up for renewal that had maybe a fixed rate might be starting to think about perhaps it's time to sell that home and go into a rental. Who knows? Or maybe sell that home and go somewhere where the prices are a little less pricey. So I suspect we're going to start to see that more in the year, but it is really, really hard to predict the future. And people are always asking me what's going to happen. And I just always have to give the disclaimer that we just don't know. We didn't know how COVID was going to affect things. It was a real surprise that it made the real estate market take off. One of my colleagues who does a lot of looking at statistics and is consistently saying that, and we've all heard this, everyone wants to live on the West Coast. Everyone wants to live in Victoria from Canada. A lot of baby boomers, that curve of baby boomers is looking to move here. And if they have the opportunity and the means, then they will be coming here if they can. So balance, financial hardships against the fact that there's, retirees with maybe no, with fixed incomes, but perhaps, good pensions or have sold their home in Toronto for way more than they purchased it for, and for way more than they can, they can certainly buy a home in Victoria for much less than that. So I suspect we will still continue to see that balancing of the challenges, financial challenges for us mere mortals, and for the folks who are who've done really well for themselves throughout Canada, who might be thinking, they really like the climate and the what's going on here in Victoria. So that's one. So let's go into the stats. And before we do the real estate board stats, I want to bring up just some other stats. So we're going to share these. This shows the last year of activity, and I'm going to sort of concentrate on, let me just pull this up, concentrate on this one first. We can see, so the darker blue is the number of properties that listed in that particular month. The lighter blue are the properties that closed, meaning that they changed hands and financially the trend and the title went into their hands. And the reds are expired. And so if we look at each of those trends individually over time, we can see more and more expired from last June. There started to be more expiries through to December, kind of reached a peak for expiries. And now we're seeing less and less because more properties are selling. We're also seeing a trend of more listings coming on as we go April, May, and I suspect this trend will continue. I certainly know that I've got a number of properties I'm going to be listing here in June, and I suspect we're going to see this trend continue to go up. If we look at last year, the trend started to go down from June, July, August for listings. I kind of think we might buck that trend this time. So so the trend was down. Now we're kind of in an upward trend. We do normally see, as we hit June, July, August, the number of listings going down, the number of sales going down, but I kind of feel like we're going to buck that trend this year. So that's one kind of fun thing to look at. Let's also look at this is actually what we've already kind of looked at. We had 706 properties closed in May. We had, that was down over last year. I'm going to actually get out of that one. We use that one every year, but it is kind of useful to look at a couple of these other things. And that would be, for example, here. Sorry, while I try to adjust this, let's try to make this move, and then, okay, I'm not going to do it that. You can see here, this is volume, year over year trends for units closed. And so in 2019, we had 6.7 thousand, 2020, 7.8 thousand. 2021 was a banner year for sure, at 9.1 thousand. And 2022, which was quite a busy year, we were down to 6.2 thousand. And this year, we're already kind of through much of the spring market. We're 2.64 thousand. We're certainly going to double, I'd say double this number, or close to, but that's still going to be lower than I think last year's, and certainly lower than the peak. We can also look at price distributions, which is kind of interesting just to see, and developers would find this interesting for sure. This is, of all the properties listing, what properties are kind of hitting, where's the price points that are hitting the most sales? And you can see here there's a sweet spot around the 500, 550,000 sweet spot. That's going to be for condos generally. There's a sweet spot too, just right around the million mark. 950 to 1 million. Just under a million is where you reach the drop-off point for being able to get a CMHC insured mortgage. So that's certainly a piece that is interesting to watch. And then there's these different stratosphere of prices. If you're 1.15 to 1.2 is another little spot there. You can also see that 2 beds, 2 baths, 1,000 to 1,500 square feet. These are the sweet spots for the amount of activity, or I guess where you're seeing the most sales. This isn't about price. This is just about demand. And again, that obviously there's more condos out there. If we were looking just at the single-family home market, these trends would be different. But I've got the whole swath of all properties, and then you can get into the granular in this stuff. If anybody wants to see this graph in more detail, certainly send me a comment, email me directly, and I can share these things with you if you're really want to see that stuff. And yeah, well, I think we'll just sort of go on to the actual real estate board stats from here, but certainly can look at that. So real estate board stats, we had 775 properties sold in the, let's actually change this tab so you can actually see it. 775 properties sold. That's 1.8% more than May 2022. And it's a 21% increase from April of last month. So certainly up over last month, and certainly up over last year. And we are starting to go into the point where, like last year, with the prices, activity, and everything was starting to go down. So and we're not seeing that trend this year yet. But this most recent interest rate hike is the big question mark, and that could be where we start to see things pull back again as people get concerned. Single family homes increased 8.7% in sales, not price, sales, over May of 2022. So this is, as Graydon says, the real estate board chair, Graydon Soul, the month of May marks the highest number of sales we've seen since April last year. We are certainly in a moderate seller's market, I would say. He's calling it a return of consumer confidence, staying strong. Uptick in inventory means there's more selection, which is great. I've been talking to lots of buyers about selection, and a lot of people have been on the fence and waiting, and I think this is the time we're going to see the most activity. We will be slowing down in the summer. Move on from there. This is Jane's favorite little stat where we talk about, I'll just go down to this one. In her honor, I will do it. So we have the single family homes in Greater Victoria. The benchmark price in May 2023 was $1,156,700. And compare that to last month, it was $1,149,500. So not a large difference there. It's definitely down from the index, the benchmark price from May 2022 from last year at $1,277,200. That's down 9.4% over last year. For single families in the core as a whole, 1.297, 1,297,600 is the current benchmark. Compared to last month, again, very, very similar, 1,295,800. So just, not really much worth speaking about, but certainly down again over last year, 1.424, 1,424,000. So that's down 8.9%. West Shore, current benchmark price is 1,042,200. That's down 8.8% over last year. It's up 2.1% over last month. Peninsula homes are averaging 1.222,500,000, and that is down 10% over last year and down 0.8% over last month. So the Peninsula has seen more of a hit, it looks like. Condos, average benchmark price is 570,000 for Greater Victoria. That is down. That's up 1% over last month, and it's down 8.3% over last year. The core as a whole, the average, pretty close to the city of Victoria or Greater Victoria, is 5.69 thousand, and that is up 0.9% from last month, and it's down 8.1% from last year. In the West Shore, 556,800 for the benchmark for a condo, and that is up 2.1% over last month, down 8.9% over last year. Peninsula, 604,600 for a condo, and that's down 0.9% over last month and down 9.1% over last year. So following the same trend of the Peninsula overall down. It's interesting. Still a great place to live. I do find when things contract, if they do tend to contract, they contract more on the outskirts, but that would also indicate you'd see that more on the West Shore, which we're actually seeing that going up, and I'm actually not calling for contraction. So. And then townhouses, let's just talk about the core townhouses, 846,600. That's up 0.8% over last month and down 9% over last year. So overall, the trend is up back towards where we were, but we're still not where we were last year. We do tend to see sort of an annual cyclical cycle of, and let's look at December 2021. We tend to see a cycle, and the last few years haven't fully followed it, but this is actually a pretty good example of it, where the line is sales and the bars are listings listed in that particular month. And we can see sales ramping up in the spring, hitting kind of a peak at the peak of spring, and then sales starting to go down into the summer. And then there's often a bit of a bump in the fall, and then they tend to fall again towards, the lowest we'll find is in the depth of winter and right around Christmas. Everybody's thinking other things. I find in summertime too, it's a little bit more of a distraction for people, and that's why we start to see the trends going down, but it's still certainly a better time to buy or sell. Well, there's reasons for buying and selling in December. You might find a great deal, but this is the actual trends that we tend to see. And this follows a fairly standard trend, although I would say last year we did find the market really started to cut off. So where you can see this ramp up of listings listing, and buyers had waited till May to list, and we would have often found actually this trend would have gone a little higher normally. You can see my mouse there, and then started to trend down actually more in the June, July, whereas we started to trend down much earlier last year. The sales to active listings ratio, this one is interesting. We've been trending up again, and that shows us we're moving towards a more solid market. Again, these interest rate hikes could mean that this next bar that we will see might be a little more even or down. We could start to bop around a bit, but it is tight for inventory still, and that is putting upward pressure on prices. We were certainly still in a seller's market where we got down to more of a balanced market, almost trending into a buyer's market down here between September and January of 2023. You can really see where the market started to fall off in last year, kind of hit that peak in February of 2022, and then just sales really started to fall off. And that's kind of correlates with all these interest rate hikes we've been seeing and fears that they've been bringing with people. So there you go. That's what's been kind of going on in the marketplace. Next week, we will have a guest. We haven't determined the guest yet, but next week we will have a guest. So certainly tune in, and thanks for watching this one. It was very stats heavy, so apologize for that. But if you like stats, then that's what you got. Okay, thanks folks, and we will see you next week. Bye now.